All right, today we're going to talk a little bit about elements of narrative. So the purpose of this presentation is to give you some literary terms and definitions of figurative language and learn how to identify these elements in texts. From that, we're going to begin thinking about how to use these literary terms for analysis, and also talk a little bit of elements of plot and conflict so that you can look at text structure. I really encourage you to continue using this presentation as a resource through all of 9A because we will be continually talking about these different terms and also talking about conflicts and structure as well. So let's start right at the beginning. A character. Those are people, animals, imaginary creatures that take place in the story. So Harry Potter, right, is a character. Dobby is a imaginary creature, but still a character. And Rory Gilmore from the Gilmore Girls is also a character. Okay. When we say characterization, we are talking about how a writer develops a character, usually through actions, thoughts, looks, emotions, and relationships to others. Okay, so they don't have to tell us how a character is. We learn how that character is through the different actions, the different emotions, the different thoughts, the different relationships that the character has. So through all of the acts that Harry Potter makes in Harry Potter, he's unsure but brave. Dobby is desperate and earnest. Rory Gilmore is witty and intelligent. Notice a narrator never tells us Rory Gilmore is witty and intelligent. We don't need that. We can get that from her different actions, her relationships with her mom, for example. That's how we can get that idea. A symbol is an object that stands for something else, usually something more abstract. So a symbol is an object that we're looking for, okay? And it has some sort of deeper meaning. Harry's scar in Harry Potter is a symbol. It represents his courage and bravery. Courage and bravery are abstract concepts. Rory Gilmore has books, and these books represent her intelligence and shyness. Okay, so whenever we see those, we know it means something more than just the fact that it's a scar or just the fact that it's a book. Imagery is visually descriptive or figurative language, especially in the literary work. This is something that invokes the senses of smell, touch, taste, sight, or hearing. So if we look at this passage from Harry Potter, we have Harry caught a whiff of damp earth and fertilizer mingling with the heavy perfume of some giant umbrella-sized flowers dangling from the ceiling. So we get this sense of smell, the whiff of damp earth and fertilizer, heavy perfume. We also get the visual, the sight, the giant umbrella-sized flowers dangling from the ceiling. We can see that, right? So we definitely get this sense, right, of smell and sight here. When you see imagery like this, I want you to think about, how does this imagery make you feel? Is this a good or a bad image? Okay. So for this one, right, it seems like this is a pretty okay image. It doesn't seem like really bad. It's not scary or anything like that. The heavy perfume, the damp earth and fertilizer, that might be more of a negative image, but then some giant umbrella-sized flowers dangling from the ceiling looks strange and seems strange and kind of oddly beautiful. So I think this is supposed to be an image that makes us feel like something's mysterious. Okay, so we don't think necessarily good or bad for this one, but we think something strange or mysterious or curious is happening. It's great to identify that when you get images, to be, how are we supposed to feel? Okay, a simile is a figure of speech involving the comparison of one thing with another, with another thing of a different kind. Okay, using like or as. It's used to make a description more emphatic or vivid. Okay, Hagrid's house looked like an ice cake. So you can ask yourself, what is this image that you imagine with this simile? Hagrid's house, iced cake. Okay? This seems like a good image, a good simile to me, because we all like iced cake, right? So it gives us the sense that Hagrid's house is pleasant. Now, if we said something like Hagrid's house looked like sewage seeping from a drain, we would probably think that that is a bad connotation. It's a negative simile. Maybe we don't want to go into Hagrid's house if it looks like sewage seeping from a drain. But since it looks like an iced cake, it might be a little bit more welcoming. So it's important to note that when you're looking for similes. Metaphor is a figure of speech in which a word or phrase is applied to an object or action to which it is not literally applicable. Okay. Again, that's if you just remove the like or as a lot of times, and you get something like Hagrid's house is an iced cake. Of course, it can't be, right? We can't live in an iced cake. But it's metaphorical, right? It's not literal. We can't think about that, but we can still imagine the iced cake. Okay. The removal of like makes the two things, which is the house and cake, seem even closer together. This all leads us to tone. Okay. And this is really important to be considering and to be kind of thinking about throughout the whole time that you are reading a story. Okay? Tone is how writers reveal attitudes and feelings through their language and description. They want you to feel a certain way about subjects and characters. We look at figurative language as a way to help us understand how we are supposed to be feeling, right? So when we think about Hagrid's house looked like an iced cake, we are supposed to feel welcomed. We're supposed to feel happy. We're supposed to feel positive. Hagrid is a good character. Okay. So if we look at this one, Harry was back with the Dursleys for the summer, back to being treated like a dog that had rolled in something smelly. So we look at the simile, like a dog, being treated like a dog, and then the imagery of smell, like he had rolled in something smelly. So we are supposed to feel probably pretty negative about the fact that Harry is being home with the Dursleys. That is the tone. The tone is negative. Right? The tone is one of disappointment, okay? Because he doesn't want to be home. He doesn't want to be treated badly. To sum up, look for figurative language while you are reading and annotate when you see it. And start to think, what is the point of this particular figurative element? Why did the author include this? This is the beginning of analysis. When we can recognize tone, when we can recognize if we're supposed to feel positive or negative about a character or about a situation, that's when we start to actually get into analysis. Let's talk a little bit about structure and conflict. Okay, we look out for these elements to help us, again, to determine deeper meanings like theme. Plot is a series of events that are related to one another. Conflict is a struggle one or more of the characters face. Without conflict, there is no plot. We need conflict for there to be plot. If we look at the story mountain, this is usually, but not always, but this is usually how a story is kind of put together. We start with the background, introduction of characters and setting, rising action, events that lead up to the climax. This is when the problem reaches the high point. Then we have some sort of solution, like falling down. They work to solve the problem or conflict, and then the wrap up, how the things end up in the story, is the resolution. Okay, so that is your standard kind of story mountain. I want you to think about how maybe your next story kind of fits in with this kind of mountain here. There are 4 types of conflict. Okay, we have man versus nature. And man, woman, whatever, right? We have man versus nature, or person versus nature. There is some force of nature causing problems for the main character. So a character caught in a hurricane, that is man versus nature. Person versus self. The main character has an inner conflict. There's something deeply wrong going on within the character, and that is causing conflict. Okay? Person versus society. The main character has a problem with the larger group, community, or culture. Okay? So the person is in conflict with this bigger outside force. And then person versus person. The main character has a problem with another character. 2 characters struggling against each other. So those are the four types. Harry Potter's conflicts in the Harry Potter series are man versus self, right? As he tries to kind of figure out who he is as a human being. Man versus man. He definitely is fighting with Voldemort. So it's Harry versus Voldemort. It's Harry versus Draco Malfoy. Okay, for example. So that's two people fighting against each other. And man versus society, oftentimes he is faced with this larger conflict in society that he has to deal with, like society being against muggles, for example, or half-bloods or stuff like that. So there is some inherent kind of discrimination going on in the society, and Harry Potter struggles against that discrimination that goes on in that society. Once we think about these conflicts, the structure, the figurative language, it helps us determine the deeper meaning or message of a text, which is a theme. And when we identify a theme and we start to show how an author reveals that theme through figurative language and conflict, we start analyzing a text. And that's where I want you guys to start thinking. Start annotating for figurative language. Start annotating for maybe conflicts that you are seeing in the text. When you do stuff like that, then it's going to help you determine what is the deeper meaning of this text and how can I go back and prove it.